And I'm like, I think that's my last shot there. So I stop him I just mute at him. He's like, meow.
That's
So it
good.
sounded just like that. Meow.
He's like, cat?
Meow. Yes. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, it's almost food plot season, Jared, and Deer Grow is one of those products that has really changed the way that we plant food plots and the success we've seen from them.
No doubt. I've been, trying to plant food plots my entire, whitetail hunting career, which is a little shorter than yours. But the minute that I started, or that I realized that I could get Deer Grow back into some of these remote plots where I couldn't get lime or fertilizer, especially in the 50-pound bag, format.
Mm-hmm.
So everything was changed. I could get into these spots moving forward with a backpack sprayer, and that's since escalated to these 40 or 60 gallon sprayers, and we're doing upwards of 5 to 10 acre food plots just with Deer Grow and having phenomenal success.
Yeah, and I mean, with the price of fertilizer, lime, diesel, everything this year, I mean, what better way to get in there and grow a successful food plot at about a third of the cost? Check out Deer Grow at deergrow.com. And we're back.
Hey.
HUNTR Podcast, episode 94. Man, it feels like forever.
It's been a minute.
It is September 29th. It doesn't feel like a minute if you're listening to this because we always have one drop every week, but it's been a couple weeks since we were recorded because of trips.
Yep.
Trips out west.
We're back. Ready for deer season.
Yeah, well, so just an update. It's 29th. I don't know. You're listening to this at sometime in October. But Ohio just opened. Pennsylvania is about to open.
This Saturday, right?
Yep, this Saturday, the 1st. I know there's some other ones. I think New York, Indiana, Michigan, maybe. There's a bunch of them start to open. So this is it, man. We're in October. It's weird though. Like normally by now I feel like I'm behind, and I still kind of have that feeling, but I'm also like
it's September.
Well, yeah, I did enough work that like I'm anxious to start seeing bucks, and like last night you and I got some good ones on camera, but yeah, it's still September, and it's that's the weird part. It's like, man, I like this. I hope something shows. It's still September.
This is starting into that time of year where it's weird. It's hard to imagine the rest of the year like these bucks showing up and stuff, because when you're not seeing them, it's like you just don't know.
Well, but we also are entering that time. It's 8 weeks. Like, I mean, as much as we prepare all year long and think about it, like the next 8 weeks is it. Yeah, in December and January, you've got chances at late season. But, I mean, when we talk about the heart of killing big bucks, it is the next 8 weeks.
Some have already – you saw Ben's buck?
Yeah.
Last week?
Ben Rising,
Done.
Obviously. Killed a giant, obviously.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, my neighbor down there in Ohio killed what I think is probably high 80s. Stud.
Nice deer.
And what's been odd about this is this last part of October has been nothing but cold fronts, I feel like. I mean, it was like 52 degrees out today in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah, today would have been the day if I was going to pick one and go for it.
We got some system coming in the weekend. But yeah, I mean, it's been nothing, which makes me nervous as we get mid to late October that, can we keep this up, or at some point do we hit that warm, dry streak? And then we're playing and waiting for a cold front to drop.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's cold right now, like you said. I'm checking the weather here.
We got rain.
Is this that hurricane rain this
hurricane
weekend?
will be coming this weekend, yeah.
Not much. I got a 50% chance of quarter inch on Saturday.
I think we're at like 0.7, so I think it's staying south.
Cool. Yeah, well, okay. So I may not end up hunting Saturday night. I was going to originally. I may just move some cameras around and stuff in the morning and then let that rain wash stuff away. The next week I got 64, 65, 66, 68. Kind of a warmer week. And then we got another front, and next Friday is 56 northwest wind.
So, yeah, I mean,
that's the 7th.
There's definitely some fronts coming through, starting to see some scrape activity. That will only increase over the next 3 weeks. But yeah, I mean, we're in it at this point, So, I mean, hopefully you're thinking or at least strategizing at some point of what you're hunting, you're getting out, you got cameras, you got stands, you're planning your hunts, or at least you're ready to go. Shot your bow.
Yeah, I think just the more information you can collect right now, the more efficiently you can plan your attack. Like that's where I'm at. It's like, yeah, I want to hunt this weekend. And if time allows, I will, especially per some of these, recent information, but it's that information that's gonna, I hope, yield some results. So I'm just going to keep doing that. I'm going to get some cameras moved around tomorrow and Saturday. And I've got some smokies. We're going to get that a shot on. Some
mocks cranked in.
Scrapes and stuff. Got some corn piles, here and there, kind of just getting inventory. And
I think it's that time frame too that, we get a lot of our target bucks happen between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. or something like that, and so it's nice to know that they're in the area. You obviously don't want to pressure in too early, right? Because, you're just, every time you get in there, you're putting scent and pressure down. And if it's, not optimum for those deer to move, if you're hunting a front, on a scrape, awesome. But other than that, I think that you're probably looking at, just trying to keep beads on what's moving through the area and then watching the weather at this point.
It's the name of the game.
Yeah. So that said, we're going to talk a little bit about the Colorado elk hunt that you just got back from last weekend.
Yep.
And long trip.
Yeah, a lot of travel.
A lot of driving.
Yeah. Shot a bull,
which was the goal.
Mission accomplished. Couldn't be happier. Other than, I suppose, I was only one of 5 guys that I went with that shot a bull.
Which is the complete opposite of the last time you guys were there.
Yeah, last time we all tagged out. I think the standard, at least for me, was a little higher.
Sure. And
I feel like I met that. I'm super happy with the bull that I shot.
You also had some weather come in. We'll talk about
some weather come in. It was a little shorter hunt. I think it was 5 as opposed to 7 the last time. We were in the elk for sure. They were definitely starting to go, which was exciting. I don't remember that last time.
Do you think you were early this time?
No, I think we were right on it.
Right on it.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time, and weather's got to cooperate, and that rain kind of put a damper on things midweek. So,
let's talk about it. So we
can kind of recap it here.
Yeah, so you left on a Wednesday?
Yeah, the 15th.
Yep, to drive out to
14th.
What was the city destination? I guess for driving.
Durango,
Colorado.
Yep, southwest corner, just past Pagosa Springs.
Okay, and so you're hunting public.
Yep.
And it's
the Wiminooch Wilderness. Yep. I had previously called it the Wiminucci.
It's just
That's not right.
Wiminooch.
It's the Wiminooch.
And we talked about it. There was a lottery, but basically there's always tags type of thing.
Sounds like it.
Yep.
High odds draw.
Yep. So you're with an outfitter.
Yep. Wiminooch Wilderness Outfitters.
Wiminooch. Got it. And hunted with them 15 years ago as well.
Yeah, 14 or 15 years ago. It's a small, like I said on the last one, family operation. It's really just the husband and wife own and run the outfit, and some of their sons guide for them. And they have some, guides that I think fill in for different weeks. But I think, and don't get me wrong, I killed an elk, so we're definitely in it. They are, that's what they do. But they also do a lot of pack trips and stuff, summer,
like
fishing, camping, like recreating trips. So, again, don't get me wrong. I'm more than happy with who we went with, and that's kind of why we went, was to reconnect with them and with the same group of guys and stuff. But there may be guys out there who are more like, I'm dead set on the elk. I want to shoot a 7-year-old bull, and I'm looking for this, and here's how I want to hunt. And I kind of lucked out because Rusty, my guide, is my age and was at the time that I shot my last bull too, and he loves to elk hunt. So he knows what he's doing, and so I shot my bull on the second morning. We were into an even bigger elk probably than I shot the first morning.
Yep.
And so, no complaints there at all. The food was great. The outfitting was great. And it's a serious adventure.
And even with an outfit, we talked about this before. By nature, I think you and I are DIY guys. Yeah. Like, we like to go in and do it ourselves. Like, it's not that we're opposed to outfitting. It's just we really like to challenge ourselves.
When we can.
When we can. This is one of those trips, because of the travel, because of the time thing, and the gear. I'm not saying it's impossible because I know there's a bunch of guys listening to this that do it, but it's tough.
Yeah, well, it has a lot to do with the location.
So how far are you guys back in? I guess start there. We get into Durango. You meet the guys. You park a vehicle.
Yep.
And you get on horses.
We had a day. So I'll kind of start to finish here. We left on whatever it was, 14th or 15th. Yep. Drove. It's 2 full days. And I'm driving with my dad and Willie, who's 63, I think. Two replacement hips. So, keep that in mind when I start talking about the horseback riding that we did here. So you and I have driven through the night before. That wasn't happening with this trip. So we stopped once or twice. 2-day trip. Also, so imagine by the end of this thing, 50 hours in the car with your dad, whoever, regardless of who you are, it's. So we got there, and we had a day to acclimate and just kind of get settled and stuff, which was nice.
Do you think that's important?
It can be. Some people, you could go right for it. There were definitely times that I could feel that.
Feel winded?
Feel the altitude. Headaches.
Ooh.
I didn't get it so much on the day of acclimation. It was mild. It was just there, kind of noticeable. Hard to differentiate from 2 hours or 2 days of driving.
For sure.
Headache. But once we got into the trip, after the first 2 mornings, especially the first morning, we went for it. I mean, we made it up to like 11:09.
Yeah.
And when we came back down, I was hurting.
You felt it.
Just headache. Yeah, just ibuprofen and like miraculously healed me.
Very nice.
Quickly. So, but anyways, we had this day to acclimate. Dad and I took that opportunity to go fishing. And so we found there's like a resort out there called Purgatory. Some nice streams back behind it. Ripped some lips for a couple hours.
Very nice.
I used Alex tied me a bunch of flies. I used the pink boy and
nice.
pulled. I probably pulled 15 or 20 out of a nice hole out there.
Charlton Fly Company.
Yeah, Charlton Flies. And so next morning, met at the outfitter's house. Drove hour and a half to the trailhead. Loaded up at the trailhead. I don't know if I talked on the last one about like the bow situation. So I don't know how most outfitters do it, but this one hasn't changed from 14 years ago. So I assume they use like scabbards, bow scabbards, which is kind of like a canvas sleeve that hangs off the saddle of the horn of the Western saddle. And I recall on the last one, like losing my peep sight because it kind of gets jostled around in there and like off the horse. The horse gets close to trees and stuff, so you got to be aware of it. I had switched it over to my back. I was strapped on the back of my KU pack, and that worked awesome. My only concern was like if like low tree limbs.
Sure.
There was once or twice I had to get off and walk, but so from the trailhead, about 6-hour ride, 15 miles, I think is approximately what we were. And the first part of that is like a pretty heavily used trails, hikers, campers, other outfitters. But I don't think we saw anybody after mile, 6 or 8. We started getting off into our own part of the Weminuche. So it's not all the Weminuche wilderness. We broke that barrier at some point, and we were kind of on our own. So kind of figure a full day
to get back in there.
Yeah, including the drive in the beginning. 8 or 10 hours. And so got settled into camp that night. Didn't sleep that well the first night. I just was restless, excited.
Yeah.
Not sure what it was. We were in wall tents, like in cots. It's cold. It was cold, so it was just kind of like figuring out how to sleep. Because it was like, when it's 30 degrees in the tent or whatever it was.
Did they not have like a wood burner in there or anything?
They did put a wood burner in there.
Okay.
So we were kind of figuring that out too. It's just like a little acclimation stage. It's like, do we stove on, stove off, zipper up halfway full way, one elbow out, two elbows out,
naked,
beanie
clothed.
on the head? Oh no. Yeah. We already know the answer.
We figured that one out already.
So got through the night, and so figured out I had an awesome horse too. His name was Cheddar. Rock solid horse. Huh?
Would you bet on him?
Bet?
Horse bet.
Not to race necessarily, but I mean, he was sure-footed, and that's what you want in the mountains.
Yeah, there was a lot of trust in that horse.
Yes, more than I anticipated. So Cheddar was good. Found out first morning.
Better than provolone.
There's also a little cheddar, and every time somebody would call for him, I'm like, what?
Got to get some better names going there. A little variety.
So the first morning, Rusty and I went up to, they call it Hamburger Hill.
Like in the war.
Exactly. A lot of murders happen there. And I don't know, man. It's kind of a blur because it was all just happening so fast. We'd gone so far. I was tired. But we walked out of camp that morning. So it was maybe like an hour and a half walk to get to where we were going to start hiking.
And now are you walking in the dark?
Yep.
You are?
Yep. Started in the dark. And eventually get to the place where it's like we're going to like start hunting. And I'm just kind of like being guided essentially, like, you know, following Rusty's lead on this stuff. And we got up to a point where he just kind of started cow calling and, you know, didn't hear anything at first. And we were just working up a trail. And so the Weminuche is there's no motorized vehicles at all, or gas vehicles, no chainsaws. So even the Forest Service has to cut logs to clear trails with handsaws.
Holy shit.
And ride horses. There's nothing.
Wow.
All of our firewood for camp is hand cut, 2-man saw.
Damn, man.
Split.
That's wild.
Which we did a good bit of.
Is that for fire prevention?
I don't know. It might have something to do with it.
Like combustible engines and stuff, I would assume.
Yeah. You know, at one point, what was kind of crazy is, like, and I'll get to this, I guess, but we would ride the horses at night quite a bit. Like coming back from hunts and in the morning, it was pitch dark other than the stars. And if we had a moon out.
Yeah, no lights.
No lights. And so, you know, it's just kind of a faith ride. You got 5-6 horses and like they know the trail and you're just along for the ride, basically.
That's a lot of faith in a horse.
Yeah. It was pretty crazy.
Cheddar better stay on the trail.
But what was wild is you'd see, I mean, they're climbing a mountain. It's not like a flat, easy ride. And so their horseshoes are sparking off of rocks all the time. Like constantly. You're seeing sparks like fly out from under their hoofs. And I asked him, I was like, is that a cause for concern? And he's like, eh.
He's like, no. You look back, there's a fire blazing. You're like, is that
fine.
cause for
It's
concern? Yeah.
But so anyways, we were working up and Rusty started cow calling and we did that, you know, for a few hundred yards, quarter mile or whatever it was. And eventually.
It seems like you're always like working up.
Always working up.
Always working.
Well, because camp is in the bottom. I think we were like 10,200, 10,400 feet, something like that. And I think eventually Rusty let out just a locator bugle, and we got a response way off. It was kind of like one of those. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I did. And so we just keep working in that direction. And it's funny, like initially I was trying to be super quiet. Like I'm like, you just gotta stealth.
Yeah.
And Rusty's just like breaking logs and like not really worried about it. And eventually I kind of figure out like we're imitating elk.
You're trying to sound like an elk.
Like all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, elk
make noise.
And so, which was useful because there was a ton of downfall. They had a beetle kill like in 2014, so there's trees down everywhere. It was kind of tough to get around. But anyway, start heading in the direction of this bugle, and there, you know, a series of setups, I guess. You know, cow calling, bugling every once in a while to see if we could get a response. Long story short, eventually we got within like audible range. Like we're hearing this bull. He's bugling his head off up on this knob. And so Rusty puts me out ahead of him, and like he's like get up there maybe 40, 50 yards. And we did one or two setups like that, and then eventually like we're close. Last we heard him, he's right up on the knob here, and he's just screaming.
That's pretty good.
And chuckling and stuff, and it's kind of funny gauging my level of excitement at that point.
Sure.
Because it's very different for me from a whitetail, just because we have so much history with them, and when you see one, it's like it's him.
I know him.
It's him.
Well, we talk about that a lot, and maybe I know that there are some people listening to this that are like that, and they like, you know, even if you didn't see him yet this year, the moment you see him, you're like, I know that deer. Yeah. There's a lot of other people that, and we talked about this, I think, no offense, but like to your dad and those guys, like, my dad too, like they didn't grow up that way. Mm-hmm. And so even if I said, hey, here's this deer, when they see him, they can't say, oh, there's that deer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's just the way that we like to hunt specific animals, which out there.
And maybe it's not just, I'm sure that has a big, part of it, but it's also something to do with the lack of understanding.
Okay.
Like, I think I have a very...
Like just being naive about elk hunting?
Yeah. Well, just as in comparison to my knowledge of whitetail.
Sure.
Like, I know how rare it is to see a big whitetail buck, whether I know him or not. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm just not as familiar with the rarity of an elk. Like, I don't know, maybe you run into these more often.
Well, even
than
like
not,
your movement, you're thinking I need to be stealthy, and your guide who's experienced in elk is like, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think the more familiar I've gotten with whitetail hunting, the more appreciation I have for it, and therefore the more pumped up I get when it does come together. And so being this is my second elk hunt ever, that I'm still like very much in the learning process here. Right. I was not quite sure how excited to be at that point. So I was pretty calm. Like, I was excited.
Well, and you had limited experience before too. I mean, it was like you were in them, your dad shot one, you shot one. Like,
very limited.
You didn't really, there wasn't
I didn't even remember
play.
it.
Yeah.
Barely.
Yeah.
So I was jacked. I was like, this is,
like,
that's what we're here for. He's
yep.
bugling.
Mm-hmm.
And so he pushes me up one more time, and we get, I did know it's not like deer hunting where it's like hide behind something. It's get in front, just get break up, get to a good spot. There's so much country out there. It's like for him to walk through and look right at you, unless you make a sound or move.
Yeah.
It's just probably not going to happen. So as long as you find good backing, stand in a good spot where you can shoot and stuff, you should be in good shape. Move up this last time, and the bull kind of gets silent. And so for like, I don't know, 35, 45, up to a minute, I'm like, did he see me move up here? I'm just not quite sure. It's kind of, it just goes, it gets calm. And then I see him coming off the knob from the left, and he's working out to this point, and I've got right off this point, it drops down, and I've got kind of a real nice bench, like right in front of me, and I can shoot most of it. I've got a range out to 40, 50 yards. I see him first at maybe 100 yards, and he's a giant. I mean, I think my bull's probably like a 220, 230 bull. This one was probably a 250, 260 bull. Stud.
Yeah, stud for that backcountry.
Stud. Real white, big, wide frame, shooter. No doubt. I'm like, here we go. First mooring, first light.
Yep.
Walks out to the kind of the tip of the knob there, and he kind of like looks down over, and he turns to the side. I thought for a minute maybe he was gonna like rake a tree, but he just kind of didn't. He just kind of stood there, and then eventually he turned and walked. And Rusty was doing a little bit of cow calling, but like he couldn't see what he was hearing, and it was enough for him to just not commit. In hindsight, we did end up seeing the whole herd. He had 10 or 12 cows up there, and at least 2 satellite bulls.
Being very naive to elk hunting, because I have never done it, am I like very turkey hunting like?
Very similar.
Like oftentimes, like when that bird is getting close, he shuts up, and you're like, "What the hell?" And then you look, and it's like, "Bam, there he is."
Yeah. So the very similar in the sense that there's a call and response.
Yeah. Location, movements, trying to get in position, multiple positions to try to sound like you're moving to get his attention.
Yes, and not that you want to be seen by the elk. Obviously, that would blow it. But it seems like you can be quite a bit more aggressive with the elk. Because so what happened was after this, at least this time of year, you know, this bull was fired up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. After he turned and walked back the way he had come, I looked back at Rusty and I was like, he went back, and he's like, let's go. And we ran up over the knob, like right in the direction he had come from. And Rusty starts like challenge bugling at him. And we're still, trying to remain hidden. We don't want the bull to see us, but we're hoping that he'll think we've penetrated his barrier.
Yeah.
And he'll come in and challenge us, which is, you don't really do that with a turkey unless you got a fan.
Yeah, right. Unless you're reaping.
And so we did that, and this satellite bull does charge us. Came in like to 25 yards. Rusty's like, draw. And so I come to full draw, and I swing. Rusty ducks, and I see the bull.
Wise move.
Yeah, I see the bull. I see my windows. Everything's slow motion. I don't have a shot. It's not a giant bull. I wasn't going to force it.
And we talked about this, not on the podcast, but 4x4 for legality's sakes.
And
right?
he was at least that. He may have been a 5x5.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's got to be a 4x4, 4 on one side, or he's got to have a 5-inch brow tine.
Oh, that's right.
Which is not that hard. So he could technically be a spike and have a brow tine that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
The outfitter's like, I've never seen one of those, but it could happen.
It's possible. I just want to be clear. I'm just here for clarity.
Yeah. And so that didn't work out. And we did a few more challenge bugles, but eventually I saw both the bulls run off down there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of were in sign. Like it's crazy. The whole ride into camp and down in the bottom, it's like I think that was a rub we saw back there, like here and there, but maybe whatever it was, 1,000, 1,200 feet above camp.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, wallows and sun and just giant beds everywhere.
That's where they're living.
Holy cow, dude! Like they're just tucked right into this little honey hole.
Mm-hmm.
And so we knew we'd boogered the spot, and I look out like across this big valley ravine thing, and we see all of the elk run out around the very edge of this cliff into the next basin, basically. And we counted it was like 10 or 15. The one
and that was definitely the ones you were
100%.
And so what do you think? Like, did he push them out of there?
We boogered them out. Or
you boogered them?
We boogered them. That satellite bull saw us for sure.
And then
he ran right in on us.
Yeah.
And I think he just took the rest with him. Who knows? Some of the other, they might have smelled us, or we pushed up into their bear. We just basically ran into a bedding area.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the first encounter. Yeah, we blew that spot, but I mean we had a good encounter.
Good encounter, good chance. Yeah.
We hunted out from there. Didn't see any more elk. Put on about 5.5 miles in total that day, which is a lot when you consider
how deep you already.
How many logs we'd crossed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
It was treacherous. I mean, it was tough country.
Yeah.
And you're way up there. We for sure did significantly more walking than anybody else that morning.
Makes sense.
So, and the outfitter knew that. He's like, yeah, Rusty's a young stud. I'll put you with him, and we'll put you to work.
Yeah.
So first morning comes and goes. Great experience. They get back. We were the last ones back. Everybody was napping, and I kind of softly woke some people. I was like, I saw a giant. You know.
Yeah. I was in them.
I was fired. I was in them. Nobody
else in them.
I think they heard a few.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really get into them though. Mm-hmm. So first night. Well, yeah, so we took a rest. That's basically how the days went. We woke up, had breakfast. We woke up at 4 or 4:30.
Mm-hmm.
Hunted first light to 10:30, 11:30. Got back at noon. Lunch at 2. Back leaving to hunt by 4:30.
Yeah, back at dark dinner.
Cheese and crackers for dinner. Light dinner.
Oh, really?
Light dinner.
No dinner like on return, like
that's at 2.
Past the F
We
out.
would do a big dinner at 2.
Big dinner lunch at 2.
Yeah, which worked out pretty good. And we would bring snacks with us too.
Sure. So
like when we pushed those deer all the bedding area, we sat down and had a sandwich. Just for kind of recollecting ourselves.
I was gonna say because
change my underwear.
If you have to go back in time, like normally we're eating pork sandwiches at like 7 a.m. in the tree stand in Kansas. Like that's they don't make them much longer than that.
I will say this, dude. I took 2 Nalgene's with me, and I also took a Camelback. That Camelback was clutch.
Yeah.
And the main reason is that it's inconvenient to have to stop and take. I never took my pack off.
Yeah,
and so to do that, I probably would have gotten dehydrated if it was up to taking the pack off.
I mean, I know a lot of people that go out on hunts that come back, especially like, listen, us guys in the East are very naive to the Western hunting. So I'm sure there's guys listening to this saying these guys like don't know shit. Yeah, we don't. But a lot of the guys from the East that go out to the West, they end up getting those altitude headaches, and they also end up fatiguing and feeling really sick because they dehydrate themselves. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of those places, it's not like I'm sweating my balls off and whatever. Like you don't realize you're dehydrating yourself in those situations, but you are, and That's what you have to keep drinking water.
Yeah. I got a word of warning from the outfitter as well. Apparently he knows a guy who knows a guy.
Uh-huh. Him and her got it on.
That was having some issues with, he thought it was like a kidney stone. Thought he was passing a kidney stone.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, kidney stone.
Passing a kidney stone. And the doctor was like, I don't know, man. Like, he ran the X-rays, MRI,
clear.
whatever. Said, you're good, man. He's like, what? The guy's a roofer, and it was like 115 degrees, and he's just slamming those liquid IVs or whatever kind of electrolyte packages. And that doctor apparently is like, that's it, dude. He's like, I've had multiple patients who drink way too much of the electrolyte drinks,
too many electrolytes,
and they get symptoms of a kidney stone.
Interesting.
So,
well, same with energy drinks. Not good for you.
Well, I'm sure there's worse consequences.
There's a dude this morning in Sheets that bought like 7 Monsters in front of me. He was like 60 years old. I'm like, bro, if you drink all those, you're going to die. Don't do it. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt Archery.
Dude, where would we be without our Hoyt bows?
Probably shooting crossbows.
or a Matthews, yeah.
One and the same.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, we love being Hoyt guys because you stand out. When you're in this room full of other people that shoot these other types of bows, I feel like the Hoyt guys just stick out.
Dude, it's just a legit bow. I mean, especially that carbon riser, man. I mean, I know that they've got several other aluminum lines as well. But for me, I'm shooting that RX-5 in the carbon model. They've since come out with the RX-7. And I can't tell you how much I love being a Hoyt guy amongst a sea full of Matthews guys. So we're out there, I think, proving them wrong, shooting 80 pounds and, killing stuff.
Hey, man, if you want to get serious, get Hoyt.
Yeah.
So first day, great, right? You're in them, you're back. Next morning.
First night, Dad and I went out and just
together.
Heard a few. Yeah, Dad and I and Rusty. And it was kind of like two hunters to a guide type of deal. And we'd branch out. And so.
Yeah, I guess tell us a little bit about that because you and I talked about it. You got base camp, and then there's basically drainages, right? That are how you guys are separating each other.
Yeah, so we had 5 hunters and 3 guides.
Mm-hmm.
So we do like 2 hunters and a guide, 2 hunters and a guide, hunter and a guide, and then we had 2 people in camp, like a cook and the main outfitter was watching horses. We had 15 or 17 horses in camp.
Right.
So it was honestly like a horseback riding trip with some elk hunting.
Yep. And then those guides and their hunters basically say, we're going to X drainage, Y drainage.
Yep, we'd branch off.
And that's how you separate yourselves out.
And they were far. I mean, they were all... it was like an hour horse ride to get to where you would tie up to hunt from.
Wow. That's wild. I mean, again, really emphasizing, I'm sure there are some, quote, easier places, but as a do-it-yourself, like, insane. Like, kudos to your do-it-yourself elk hunters out there.
Yeah. I mean, you could do it, but it would be so hard. It would be so hard to pack a camp back in that far. I mean, just the amount of walking. It's like, because, I mean, dude, one guy's not packing out an elk no matter what.
No.
In time.
Yeah.
It's just, it's such a gigantic animal.
Well, we'll talk about
dude, it's
that
one
here
quarter.
on your harvest.
It's 1/4 at a time.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, crazy.
Like, literally. So the least you're doing it in would be 1, 2,
3, 4.
3, 4
guys.
Trips or 4 guys to pack one elk out would be you'd be doing pretty good. And to pack about 15 miles.
Yeah, that's crazy.
One way.
Well, we'll talk about that in terms of the temperature and stuff. So, all right, so morning 2. This was what was cool because this is when you get on, now we know Cheddar, right? And like it's full faith in Cheddar that he don't walk you off a cliff. Like he's not having a bad day and just says, F it, I'm taking off the cliff.
Well, we rode out the night before, and that was the first experience. This is the first ride out the night before. But so, okay, we're familiar with night rides, the faith rides now, so that's where we're starting. So Dad and I and Rusty are going to snow slide, the upper bowl. And we get on the horses in camp, ride out at about 4:30.
Yep.
And head for
any bugling in the dark as you're like going or anything?
No. In fact, it was odd. Like when from camp the first night, I was like,
You think
it's huge, but it doesn't feel that big. It's kind of like I can see all the hillsides around here. You'd think you'd be able to hear something.
Nothing. Did you ever hear a bull at camp?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One or two.
Okay.
One or two. But it was just bizarre how, like in the daylight, you get on a horse and ride an hour, and you're just now at the foot of these hills that you could see from camp.
Sure.
And it's like,
how is it that far away?
There's a ton of country there.
Yeah.
It's the wilderness.
Yeah. Womaniche.
It's the wilderness. So we get on the horses. We're riding out to Snowslide in the dark. That is an hour and 15-minute ride.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, up this giant drainage. And we get clear to the back of it, and where we're going to tie horses up. And Rusty's like, hey, I'm going to tie the horses up and stuff. You guys can walk up like 50 yards or so and just take a peek at this bull. You should be able to kind of see it, see if you can glass it a little bit. And as soon as we get up there, I can see an elk on the hillside. Just, it's daylight at this point. Tree line is at like roughly 11,900, 1,200 feet, something like that. Or 12,000 feet. And I could see what looks like a bull, right there, about 3/4 of a mile. We mapped it. And a few cows beneath him. And I just can't quite tell. Rusty had talked me out of bringing my big binos.
Oh, really?
He's like, he's too heavy. We're not going to do much glassing. Like, I'm like, okay. Like, I take your word for it.
Yeah.
I really could have used them.
Yeah.
But it's all right. Them Western guys their eyes or whatever have adapted to just like, they can see 10,000 yards through or whatever it is through like the worst.
Oh yeah.
The worst binos ever. They know what it is. So I took his word for it. He's like, that's pretty decent bull. He's like, we need to hunt him. And he's like, yeah, there's 10 cows. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, there's 7 cows and 3 calves. I was like, okay, take your word for it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So we start hunting this bull. And basically, the way that we do this is we stay out of sight, obviously, get into the timber beneath him, and we can see he's heading from left to right above tree line. They're just feeding in these like brushy draws that are cut out of the hillside. And feeding left to right, we get in the timber beneath him on the left. So it's a basin that goes like this. We hop up in the timber and start trying to get to parallel with him.
You're basically trying to parallel him.
Yep. And so we're trying to catch up to him.
And obviously, because of the tree line, you have to stay low. Can't go high above them.
Yeah. Maybe 200 feet below them.
Okay.
Which, I mean,
200
feet below and whatever.
Behind
200-300 yards behind him at least.
Yeah, it's a long way still.
Yeah, he's far. And so there was a few more windows where we could kind of glass him a little better. And I was like, yeah, it's decent bull. I couldn't tell he was a 5x5. I was like, I could just tell he's got a decent frame, long brows.
Well, and again, we talked, like he was a herd bull, wasn't a satellite.
Which I don't know technically what defines a herd bull versus a satellite, but what I do know is this was the only bull with 10 cows.
Yeah.
So, and there were no other bulls there.
At least in the current moment, he was the man.
He's this herd's bull.
Yeah. Yes.
And so, yeah, I was pretty sure, if he came in, he looked like a shooter. And so we're kind of getting to parallel him. And so same as the morning, this seems to be the strategy here is we're always hunting up. So we're staying beneath him. And
is that a thing, because again, from a whitetail perspective, like morning, I think thermal's rising, which means my thermals would rise to him. Again, that's got to be a challenge to get your...
It's funny because it got to be a joke by the end of the trip because like Rusty doesn't pay attention at all. He's like, no.
What's his name? John Eberhart.
He's like, scentlock, baby. No, he was actually wearing Kuyu.
But he doesn't pay attention to anything.
He's like, you can't.
Because
he's like,
swirls,
it's gonna...
Swirls change.
Yeah. He's like, just hunt. It's going to change. And I was like, okay. So every once in a while, I'd be like, hey, Rusty. And I'd throw some milkweed up, like, I think we're good. He'd be like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, I collected a bunch of milkweed yesterday.
Yeah. I got a spot. If you ever need extra, I've got a spot where there's
I picked some on that property. I picked some on that property with Dave.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. There's a ton over there.
Yeah.
So we're paralleling them, and same deal. Set up once. Dad's with us this morning. So, So I had let Dad shoot the night before.
Yeah, off and on.
And so we switched. So Dad's like, hey, Jared shooting first this morning.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
We set up once, do a little bit of calling, don't hear anything. Move up a little further in a direction, and we get a response. maybe, I don't know, 250, 300 yards away. Enough that I'm like, I look back at Rusty. I'm like, he's still up here.
And you're trying to get him to think he's left a cow behind, basically.
Yeah, I think so. Exactly. And so I was like, I think he's far enough up here that like the idea is you want to really penetrate their barrier. Like you want to burst. Burst their bubble. Like you want them to be like it's not some guy calling at me. This is one of my cows. I lost her right down here.
Help me.
Help. Have you ever seen The Boy?
I've not.
You've seen The Boy? The premise is that there's a doll, and the whole movie, like, you think the doll is like haunted, and spoiler alert, there's a real dude living in the walls that's like actually doing this stuff.
Not necessarily a boy.
Yeah, well, it was a boy that grew
into a man.
And so throughout the movie, this babysitter that they hired to like watch her has to follow these rules, 10 rules. It's like crust off the sandwich, pull the covers up, kiss before bed. Okay, so the climax of the movie is she is like getting ready to like kill him, like, you know, put the story to rest here. And so she is like adamantly reciting the rules to him. She's like, Brahms, get in your bed. It's time for bed. And so he does so because it's like the rules as part of it.
Yeah.
And the very last like climax here is the last rule is kiss before bed. And so he lays down in this bed and she's like, okay, good night, Brahms. And she's going to like whatever she's going to do. And he's like laying there in a mask and he goes, kiss. And she goes, not tonight, bro. So she goes, kiss. Anyway.
That's good. That's good. Is it a horror movie?
So now Marge and I've been saying that to each other.
They love the like thriller horror.
It's almost October, man. It's like fall here. So now Marge and I have been saying that to each other like
people are thinking pumpkin spice. He's thinking like horror movies, you know?
Yeah, dude. Netflix series You. Have you heard of it?
Are you kidding? Come on,
I
Nick.
I just started. It's great.
Oh,
season 1?
Yeah.
Oh, talk to me when you're in season 4 because it hasn't come out yet.
4's coming up.
Yeah. Come on, Nick.
So anyways, bull sounds off.
That's like saying you're on episode 10 of HUNTR Podcast.
Yeah. You guys ever heard of Breaking Bad?
Shut up. I'm only on season 2 of that.
Jeez.
Oh, boy. That's worth watching.
Yeah, that's a great
one. So the bull sounds off 250, 300 yards. We move one more time. And I'm up maybe 50 yards ahead of these guys, like up the hill. And
only the guide is calling. Yep.
So just Rusty's calling. He and Dad are back the hill from me. We'd last heard the bull up here over our right shoulder. We set up. Rusty starts cow calling, and we hear this bull sound off back here.
So he came to pick you up.
He had swung back and was now back, still above us, but in the direction we'd come from. And I was like, I don't know at the time what I thought, but I was like, okay, I don't think I had put the pieces together, but I was like, okay, he's not that far. Yeah. He's right here. And we're set. I'm ranging everything I can. There's kind of 2 drainages. I found a really nice spot, and there's like a couple trails above me I can see. And we're sitting there for, I don't know what it was, 2, 3, 5 minutes, probably not that long. And at one point I look back down the hill and I can see Dad, and he's like giving me eyes, like I see him coming. I'm like, okay. And so just watching up here, and he came down off the hill, kind of cleared out of some cedar trees. I'm like, there he is.
Yep.
All by himself, just creeping, kind of like looking. And just like, you know, a Tom Turkey would, or, you know,
looking for
what he heard.
Calling. Yeah.
And comes down, levels off with me, and he's walking right at this log I had ranged at 27 yards. And I was like, he's gonna walk right through there. And I'll kind of walk you through how this went. So the day before, Rusty had cautioned me. He's like, you know how with a whitetail you try to draw with their head behind a tree? Don't try to do that with an elk. He's like, they'll sense that you're there, they'll stop, and you won't get a shot if you don't have one already. He's like, wait until they're in the open, and then draw your bow and shoot them. I'm like, okay.
And so even if he sees you, like he's thinking he's still going to pause enough that you're going to get the shot off?
Believe so. Believe that's the thinking, yeah. And so I have that in my head, and I'm like, okay. So he goes behind some trees. I'm like, I could have drawn there, and I just, you know.
That's a tough instinctive hold back at that point.
Well, and I like to draw. I like to hold as little as possible anyway. So I'm like, okay, this will work. So I let him get to this very last tree that he's got to clear. It's a cedar tree, and as he's behind it, I get to here. I get to here. So I don't draw, but I come up to where I'm ready.
You're ready to draw.
And I'm like this, and it's uphill. I mean, it's probably like this. And he doesn't sense that. His head clears, and he looks right down at me or past
Through
me.
you, yeah.
Yeah, he's just looking down. And so for a minute, I'm like, that's that moment of make or break. And he turns and keeps walking, and I come to full draw, and I notice he's quickly getting through the window too much. And I'm like, I think that's my last shot there. So I stop him I just mute at him. He's like, meow.
That's
It sounded just like that. Meow.
He's like, cat?
Meow. Yes. And when I do that, just like whitetails will do, he stopped, and his head had almost cleared the thing, so he brought it back and stepped towards me a little bit. He's like, what's that? Probably is what he was thinking. And I mean, just a split second. It all happened at once too. Yes. It was just instinctive. Like I've never anchored and released so fast. I probably mewed as I was anchoring, and I put it right on the shoulder. I mean, dude, I'm not afraid of that shoulder.
Well,
and we're gonna have a good conversation about this.
Your arrow, your arrow is built.
I built it to drive through.
That.
I've never not got a pass through on a whitetail, even with shoulder shots. Okay. I got humbled by this thinking.
It's a much bigger animal.
That's where we're going. Course to me, put it right on his shoulder, let her go.
Yeah.
Hits exactly where I was aiming. Looks like decent penetration. My initial thinking is drilled him.
Yeah. Definitely not a pass through.
Definitely not a pass through. He takes off, keep heading to the right. I mentioned there's little drainages on either side. I run down and up the next one to try to see if I can just see where he went. I don't see anything. I don't hear any crash. No, just nothing.
Yeah.
But I felt good about the shot. I'm like, he's done.
Yeah.
So I run back down to Rusty and Dad, and we kind of celebrate. And I was like, you see the shot? I was like, what do you think? Like, does it look good? And he's like, yeah. He's like, a lot of arrow hanging out of him. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I saw that too. I was like, I'm pretty sure I got at least like a foot of penetration.
Yep.
And he's like, okay, yeah. Okay. So we're optimistic, cautiously optimistic, I should say.
I mean, just got to get in the cavity.
Yeah.
Because if you're in the cavity, you're in the lungs.
Yeah. So we just kind of settled down. Took an hour to just wait. We just waited an hour. Ate a little bit of lunch. And eventually get on the blood trail, go right up to where we hit, and maybe 5 yards after impact, there's some blood here, here's some blood here, just on the right side where I'd hit him. And I'm encouraged by the blood trail. Looks good. The fact that there is blood, it's like, okay, good.
Yeah.
We find the arrow snapped off maybe 30, 40 yards after impact, and we're able to kind of verify with the bloodline on it that I had only gotten maybe 7 inches of penetration. So not as good as I thought. I mean, 7 inches,
this isn't 7?
Nick for reference.
I don't know what that looks like.
7 inches.
I thought this was 7. That's not? Oh, no.
And
I need a new roller.
So I'm like, okay, well, we'll just keep taking it patiently here. We gave him an hour. Still got good blood.
I mean, what he was bleeding? I know, obviously one side, but he was bleeding good.
Bleeding good. No giant puddles, but I mean,
easy to follow.
Easy to follow.
And that's probably not. I mean, that terrain and that conifer area, that's not easy for blood either. It's not like leaves and things like that.
I mean, but there was, like I said, so much downfall that you'd have these big dead logs, and it's like, oh, it's covered in blood.
Got it. Okay.
So we get up maybe another 40 yards, like 80, no more than 100 total, and we hear him.
Yeah.
He's groaning in his bed. He's like, oh.
He's hurt. Kiss?
That's what it sounded like. Kiss. And luckily we had some cover between us and another little dip, so I had an opportunity. Rusty's like, knock another arrow.
So when you heard him, what was the movements like of like, did you hunker down, game plan? Like
Rusty was right in front of me leading the blood trail.
Yep.
We kind of heard him at the same time. I had the natural instinct to knock another arrow.
Sure.
If I didn't have one knocked, I might have had one knocked already.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I probably did.
Yeah, I would assume so.
And I think he ranged him for me. There were two.
He heard him and said, "Oh shit."
Yep.
Right
There's
there.
2 pine trees. We were parallel with him at this point.
Okay.
Not up, just straight across. 2 pine trees like this, and I just had a nice window. I could send one right through there. So I put another arrow in him, and I just immediately, out of instinct, just knocked another one. And as long as he's laying there, I'm gonna keep putting arrows in him.
Yeah.
And so I put a third arrow in him that, in hindsight, I don't think did anything. I think it just cracked I cracked the shoulder real low. I mean, he was laying in grass, so I was just kind of aiming at cavity.
Yeah.
That second one did it to him, though. And so one of those next 2 arrows, he stiffened up and enough that he kind of fell backwards or whatever. He lost his positioning and started tumbling down the hill. And he probably fell 80 or 100 yards.
Probably drove
heavy. Sounded like a frick, like if you pushed a boulder off a cliff.
Probably drove that broken arrow off in there a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sure that rage didn't feel good in his cavity.
No. Well, he was hurt. He was hurt bad. And we'll circle back to my thinking on this.
Mm-hmm.
He would have died.
Sure.
For sure. He would have filled up and drowned eventually, probably. And unfortunately.
It's a big animal, big cavity.
Yeah. But that's where he died. He died at the bottom there. And
woohoo!
Yeah. Well, we just gave him another 10 minutes, just washed him with binos, made sure. Yeah, celebrated again.
Mm-hmm.
We'd recovered him successfully, essentially. And, from there, the work kind of started. We got down, took pictures. It's funny. I was obviously super jacked. I'm like, that is what I came here for. And also, this is how you know I'm married. Subsequently, jacked that he was big enough for a European mount, but I knew my wife would be excited. He wasn't quite big enough for like a pedestal mount.
A pedestal mount.
Yeah.
Which would be a large animal.
And expensive.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was like, it's perfect. He's perfect.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Stealth Cam.
Dude, where would we be without our cell cams?
I would definitely be divorced at this point.
Yeah, I hear that.
I mean, the fact is I spent more time checking cameras than I actually did hunting prior to cell cameras. Now at least my wife can enjoy me being in the comfort of my own home, buried in my phone checking those pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, when it comes to trail cameras and definitely cell cameras, reliability is, I think, the number one thing that we're looking for. Stealth Cam just has a long reputation of reliable cameras, and ultimately that is the most important thing to us. They have to work.
In terms of reliability, there's not a better camera on the market than Stealth Cam, whether you're talking about the Fusion X, the Reactor, or the DS4K Transmit. And most of them are under $200.
Stealthcam.com. Check them out.
So before we get into like the next, like the work starts, because I really want to hear that. Like, now that you found them, like, what were your thoughts on the shots? Like, let's talk that real quick.
I'm gonna change my broadhead next time I shoot at elk.
Really?
Yeah, for sure. I just
so you're thinking that those tri-pans?
I'm thinking that any mechanical broadhead, it's pretty impressive that I got 7 inches of penetration directly through the shoulder blade. My thinking is that
he was at 27 yards. That's probably why. If he was at 47, you would not have.
Yeah, maybe not. My thinking is that my bow and arrows are essentially tricked out for momentum. I've got those things built to pass through
on a whitetail.
Through anything.
Yeah.
Is 80 pounds and a 470 grain arrow. I know that guys are out there shooting 550 and
sure 700.
You could increase FOC. You and I basically are walking the line of momentum versus cutting diameter.
Well, that's why we're shooting. I think you and I probably would shoot a 125 grain tribe pan, but I don't think they exist.
They don't, and you're right, I would.
Otherwise, we would have.
So, like, what I'm saying is, I'm not going to change anything for whitetail. I think it's perfect. But the reality is,
those elk,
a 250-pound animal is a lot different from an 800-pound animal.
Yep.
And they're just huge.
Mm-hmm.
They're so thick and dense. I mean, it's.
So, what would you change to? Like a single bevel?
Some kind of a fixed blade.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
maybe not single bevel like necessary, but 125 grain, 150 grain.
I think that removing that the mechanical loss of momentum would be enough to get
so
the
still
penetration.
100 grain, but fixed.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and 125 certainly wouldn't hurt. It would just change your
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it starts limiting your distance if you go up.
a little bit.
Takes your momentum out.
A little bit.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion because, you know, you and I are very confident in our arrow builds. And that said, like, we build FOC and momentum and pass through, like you said. We also shoot those tripans, not because we're, like, sponsored by Rage or Rage fans. It's that, number one, we get pass throughs. Number two, we get giant holes and lots of blood.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if we make marginal shots, and that's fine. You can criticize us all you want. Like, I'll make marginal shots on deer. I just will. It happens, scenario, me, whatever, it doesn't matter. That cutting diameter on those broadheads and the way that those broadheads are made gives me a lot of blood that even if I make a marginal shot, I will find that deer. Doesn't matter if I find that deer I found 1.5 miles or 2 miles later. I don't care. I'll find that deer.
Yeah, you want to open them up. I mean, the principle is no different with an elk.
Mm-hmm.
What's different is you have to get an adequate amount of penetration.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a giant cavity that you're trying.
Right.
Like 7 inches on a whitetail probably hits single lung into double lung.
Yeah.
7 inches on an elk, single lung, I would assume,
Yeah.
right?
And so, like a lot of guys say, well, you plan for worst case scenario. That's why I shoot a single bevel. This was worst case scenario on an elk.
Mm-hmm.
I fully believe that if I shot, obviously guts, and more than likely a broadside or quartering away lung shot, I would have gotten adequate penetration for double lung.
Yeah, yeah.
The fact that I hit that shoulder
Completely
is worst case.
Yeah, it kills momentum.
And so I am looking at apples to apples. I've shot deer in the shoulder with a Rage tripan and gotten a pass through. Check that box. I've shot an elk in the shoulder, not a pass through. So, like I said, I'm not going to change anything from my whitetail setup. But to accommodate for that worst case scenario on an elk in the future,
fixed blade,
I would shoot a broadhead that's going to give me more penetration, which generally speaking is going to be your fixed blades.
Yep, makes sense. Okay, cool.
So
curious, that second shot, the one that you thought did him in, how far was that? 20, 25 yards
25.
Still? Did you pass through on that?
Nope.
Really?
Darn close. In fact, that's a good example of what I'm talking about. So
because I figured that was a broadside.
It was a broadside double lung, touch high but good, double lung shot, and I had cape on the opposite side poking out.
Wow.
So not quite a full pass through.
Well, I mean, that just puts into perspective, you know. And listen, I'm not going to say that we're not Daryl in a rocket science. If you go back and listen to our talk with Troy and that Ranch Fairy and that whole spiel. That said, like, you have to understand that the moment that your arrow and broadhead makes contact with something, that friction force is slowing down and destroying any kinetic energy that you have, right? And so in a whitetail, if you think about a whitetail's cavity, and, you know, I'm not talking like an absurd 290-pound deer. I'm talking like an average mature buck, let's say in that 210 range. You're talking about probably 16, maybe 18 inches at the most wide.
Yeah.
If you're talking about an elk, you're probably talking 30 to 35 inches wide would be my guess. Yeah. I mean, damn close to full shaft plus
30, something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So, I mean, all of that, that extra almost double distance is acting as reduction friction on that kinetic energy.
I mean, yeah, I'm just trying to figure, probably 36 inches.
Yeah.
36 inches.
And so double that thing out. I mean, it's impossible. I mean, the amount of energy that's taken away from your arrow when you're making a pass through, like, great, you stuck into the ground, but had it gone 10 more inches or 15 more inches, it would not have passed through that animal.
Yeah.
And so that's what we talk about. If people look about whether it's an actual fixed blade or a mechanical, doesn't matter. There's friction happening on that bow that is slowing it down. That's why we talk, and no knock to them, we talk about schwackers and the way that they open up. It destroys your kinetic energy. It destroys any momentum.
The Rages. They all do.
Yes.
There's no doubt that there are some major drawbacks to mechanical broadheads. Like,
yes.
We're not ever going to say that there aren't. In fact, I think that if I mean, we could go all the way down this rabbit hole, but if we could shoot fixed blades that flew identical to your field points that had as big a cutting diameter, which is huge. They don't even make broadhead.
No.
We'd shoot them.
The closest I ever shot was a Ramcat. The original Ramcats were as close to flying like a fixed blade, but like a mechanical, but were fixed.
Yeah.
But here's, I think, the key, and maybe the elk guys are sitting this and saying, yeah, dude, that's freaking obvious. Like, if you're a whitetail guy listening to this, like, you know, clearly it requires a different setup for worst case scenario. Not best case, because best case you would have double lunged.
Because, like, I'm kind of an extreme case here, shooting 80 pounds, and the arrow setup that I've got. Yeah, most guys are not.
They're probably closer to me, where I'm shooting 70 or they're shooting 65.
And you probably got a 440 grain,
454 or something.
Right. And so imagine you shooting the same, you would have got probably 2 inches less of penetration.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have killed that elk.
And
or it would have been a long day.
Yeah. And I mean, look at like an Eberhard or even Willie, you know, who's with us on this trip. The guy's got 27-inch arrows.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're...
I mean,
your carbon Maxima Blues. And
what did Eberhard say he was pulling? Like 40 pounds? Yeah, I mean...
You need all the penetration you can get.
You need a heavy-ass arrow, and your range is 20 yards.
Yeah.
It's just what it is.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, lesson learned on that.
Cool, though. I mean,
killed him. I was dude, I'm super thrilled with the result.
It is. It's a great, like you said, it's a humbling case to say, all right, and again, that's the extreme. That is a giant. If you're hunting whitetails, no doubt, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, but that's a giant animal.
It's still on a scale. I mean, consider your poundage and your arrow weight and all that stuff. And so I'm still on the extreme end of that, but I do that so that I can shoot those big expandable broadheads and not worry about penetration. That's why I'm doing it.
Yep. Makes sense.
So,
okay. Anyways, all right. So we cover that. Animals down, work begins.
Yep. We basically quartered him out. He had already fallen most of the way down the hill, so we carried the quarters an additional 50 or so yards down to the bottom of the hill where the pack horses could get to. Rode back. We put it all on tarps and stuff, covered it in the shade. Came back that night.
So you left it there, how many hours, you think?
4 or 5 hours.
Okay.
There were some flies on it when we got back.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of impossible to avoid completely. Do your best to scrape those off. We keep the stuff separate. So I think meat goes bad when it's cold and then warm.
Yeah.
And cold and warm.
Yep.
In this case, as long as it's cooling, like you're in good shape.
Yeah, because obviously it starts at 90 some degrees, and then it's slowly working its way down. Yeah,
you're in good shape. So came back with our game bags and pack horses. I'll pull a picture to put on the pod here of like how we did that. But basically, one horse gets rear quarters and tenderloins and the head on top. That's it. And then the other one gets front quarters and back straps.
I feel like that first horse got the raw end there.
Yeah, you want the strong horse to have the...
Was Cheddar the strong horse?
No, they have different pack horses. There's apparently a very limited number of horses that won't freak out when they see that, if the whale tails hit their back or whatever. So I forget the one's name, but so we packed them out and
got to camp,
kept the quarter separate that night,
and that was it, right? I mean, we talked about this last time. When you guys kill in the morning, like, you're done for the day. Like, that's Dad didn't go back out that evening, did he?
Oh yeah,
he did.
When we rode back out to get my quarters, everybody else went hunting.
Oh wow, very cool.
Yeah, it was me and the cook that went and got the.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And Rusty came with us initially too, just to
make sure
get everything on the horse. I mean, it's not like, oh, throw them in the bags and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's freaking monster.
The dude's like a sailor. Like all the knots he knows. He was tying it up. He's like, "Do you ever see anybody tie a double diamond on a set of antlers?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You're about to."
Oh, very nice. Thank you. That sounds great.
And so yeah, rode him out.
Well, yeah, because I mean, one of those quarters probably weighs 100 pounds, a little less.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Something like that. At least the rear quarters.
Yeah, rears, not the fronts.
So we packed him out to the trailhead the next day. Outfitter's wife took him to the processor, so he was out.
Wow.
Gone. I spent the next morning caping him out. I did a pretty nice job. I caped him like just practicing for
Yeah, because I mean, you weren't actually caping for a mount. You were caping
Yeah.
for quarter.
Yeah, we'd already cut it up to
Yeah.
the C1. But yeah, I was happy with my cape job and ended up. I actually gave the head pelt to the cook. She wanted to use it for, I don't know, tying flies or
Wearing on her
making
face.
little pen holders or something.
Yes.
And yeah, so the rest of the trip was kind of, guys were into elk. I know my dad got close to another bull.
So yeah, what did the rest of the trip like? Did you go out?
Not until the last day.
Well, because you got rain then.
Got rain day 3, 4. A lot of Mexican train.
That's not
That's
anything.
Domino's.
Oh, Domino's.
Yeah, Domino's.
I gotcha.
Yeah, just I bust out the bourbon. I took some Angel's Envy with me.
Mhm.
Big hit.
Classic.
Yeah, some Mexican train, some cards,
Mm-hmm.
rain. Just kind of
Mm-hmm.
putzing around camp. I went fishing.
You did
ripping some serious lips.
On the backcountry cutthroats.
Yeah, I cut.
No bears, no mountain lions.
One guy said a sow and
Cubs.
2 cubs pushed off an elk he was getting ready to shoot.
But those are all black bears, right?
yeah, black bears.
Yeah. No grizz.
So I cut a bunch of,
Cuddies.
the first cutthroat I caught ended up 20 feet behind me. I didn't know how small they were going to be. So
Yeah. That's cool.
I've got my dad's set arm.
Yeah. Okay. And then so you did go last day you went out with Dad?
Last day I went out, last morning, the outfitter basically pressured me into going. He asked me like 5 times. He's like, Jared, you going this morning? I was like, I don't know, man. It was pouring rain.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go. The last time he asked me, I was like, yep, I'm going.
Yeah.
And we went out and we did see elk, but it was miserable. Like,
Ugh.
the area between your balls and your butthole?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was wet.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's
the
not
gooch.
good. Yeah.
So we came
It's
back.
a good indicator of the wetness.
Dried everything off. The very last night, it was nice. The weather started to turn around. Had a nice cold front that day.
Yep.
And got into elk. Just that was the story. It just didn't quite pan out.
Somebody else
Trip.
slung an arrow though, right?
Yeah, Willie shot I think a small 4x4 on day 3,
Okay.
and I think just made a bad shot. Wasn't able to recover it. It was a high. He thinks probably a non-lethal shot.
Got it. Big animal, man. The more important question is, did you bring us elk meat today?
I did.
Fucking right.
Yeah. Not as much as I meant to, but it's okay. I'll see you in a week. Because every time I go to the gym, I see people that I've promised.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, I got some in the cooler side.
Slowly my share gets depleted.
I brought you some back straps,
Ugh.
which I have very little of. So
I appreciate it.
you're welcome.
I
I
appreciate
brought some
that.
hamburgers too. So
Mm-hmm. Very cool, man. That's awesome.
yeah.
And I mean, we talked about it. I mean, who knows? Like, I can't obviously age it. It was at least 4, is what we're thinking.
Well, and I don't know how either. So I just asked Rusty. I was like, what do you think? And he's like, it's probably a 4-year-old bull.
Cool.
And I was like, why do you think? He's like, just looking at him.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the way it is.
Yeah, because I mean, we were looking at the upper molars and stuff because we obviously don't have the lower jaw, but yeah, that's cool. Very cool.
Definitely a stud of the mountain.
And then a freaking long trip home.
Long trip. Yeah, I mean, another 26-hour drive and 6 hours back to the trailhead. And
Wow.
yeah, it was quite a trip. And I was impressed with some of those older guys. Willie's 63. There was one other guy in camp with us that we met right before going. His name was Rick. He was 70.
So he basically was coming on his own and he packed in the group. That's cool.
And I mean,
Where is he from?
Texas.
Mm.
My hips were feeling it
Mm-hmm.
by the end of the
Your
trip.
hips don't lie.
I can't imagine, those guys at their age.
Sure.
So it was pretty impressive, but
Are they? Have they moved since they've got home? Or
don't know. Yeah, don't know. Yeah,
I mean,
not my problem.
yeah, I dropped them off at their house.
Back to their wives.
You know,
so.
I know
none
you
of
said you were scared about losing muscle. Did you lose any weight?
I gained a pound.
No.
Dead serious. I
Must
was
have been all that Mexican train.
yeah. I was fully In fact, I've just been gaining weight since I got back.
Wow. It's the hormones.
Well, you know what?
You're starting to rut.
It's bulking season, dude.
Yeah.
It is bulking season because
Starting to pee on your tarsals.
so I don't know how, but yeah, like I said, came back, gained a pound.
Maybe the facial hair.
The mustache grew.
Certainly is not hurting.
1 pound of facial hair.
Certainly is not hurting. Whatever it was, I gained a pound. I ate all the. I mean, I don't hold back.
Listen, this is
or,
an important discussion. How were your poops there on the mountain?
Great.
Yeah, wet wipes.
Yeah. Yep. A lot of wet wipes. Just just out
Well,
there.
I know in the outdoor settings you like to grab and hang. Was that an issue?
You know, in recent years I've got better at squatting.
Oh, okay.
So the hang is not as
it's all that
necessary.
leg work you've been doing.
Yeah.
Leg day is like every day for you. So.
Yeah. So I get a little. I'll just kind of like lean back against a tree or something. But yeah, wet wipes are essential. And where was I going? Oh, so listen. So for the longest time, when I've been like training for this, whatever, doing my stair steppers and stuff, I was pretty consistently. I was peaking at like 293 was my weight.
193.
Yeah, sorry, 193 pounds. And wow. Yeah. And I was like, I'm fine with. I'm just not. There's no weight I'm trying to get to.
Sure.
I was just like, okay, that's where I'm at. So when I expected to lose, I don't know, 6-8 pounds, and just didn't, gained a pound. Maybe some trick with the altitude or something.
Yeah, that could be it.
Gravity.
Yeah. Could have been like your 4 combo packs you probably got from Wendy's on the way home or something too.
I don't know, man. I don't feel like I ate like a crazy amount. I don't know, gained a pound. So I'm like 294.
194.
194. Yeah, I don't know why I'm saying that. 194.
We have to shrink Jared for the podcast. He's actually a giant.
Yeah.
Listen to this, dude. I stepped on the scale last night at 197.
Whoa.
Damn.
I haven't weighed that much in years.
Might be retaining water.
And so I'm kind of going with it. I'm stopping cardio.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for the next couple weeks, I'm going to just,
Well, yeah, I mean, what do you need it for?
Right. I'm going to go into a little bit of a bulking phase here. Just see what happens. See if I can break that 200 mark.
You're going to need to bring it back for Kansas Public, that's all.
I'll be all right.
I'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah. So yeah, gained a pound.
Well, fun trip, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
Cool experience. It sucks about the rain, though, because, man, again, just like when we go up and hunt with Steve Shirk here in a few weeks, like, once the trip's planned, I mean, it is what it is. You just kind of got to deal with the weather that's thrown at you.
Yeah,
and
there's nothing you can do.
When you get those kind of days, it sucks. I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah. Well, and it was just kind of luck of the draw, that I was up to shoot and we got some weather at the start, kind of like our Kansas trip the other couple of years ago. Just, it happened early and.
Yeah. If it didn't, it got shitty and it was tough.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no, I'm stoked. Meat in the freezer. A little bittersweet that the other guys didn't get them, but there's.
Yeah, I'm sure it was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you and your dad and Willie will now continue on the home farm for whitetails.
And I've had some solid shooters showing up here recently. So.
Are they coming this weekend?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll get up tomorrow and just kind of start nosing around, moving cameras around. I may hunt once or twice, see what the weather does. And
we're in it, man. I mean, you're listening to this. It's October. This is going out Tuesday, Nick? October 4th, if you're listening to this. So, yeah, I mean, we're in it. I mean, dude, every week gets better right now. At some point, we can't say that, but right now, every week is going to get better in the whitetail woods, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. At some point, it'll start to decrease. Goodness.
I'm stoked, man. Stoked to get out.
Yeah. Well, cool. That's going to do it for this podcast. We'll probably have a guest up next week. Don't know who yet.
I think since the last pod, we hit 10K. So
we hit 10K.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Did we have to give away a camera?
Yeah, we can announce it next pod.
Pretty sure you said we were going to give one away on the last one.
All right. So if your name is Woodsman with a Z, you just want a new stealth trail camera.
New car.
We'll do it again. Let's do it again. What the hell? All right, so if you're listening to this, if you haven't already, subscribe, hit the notification bell, maybe leave a comment. It's easy for me to find you then. And we'll give away a trail camera next week. Cool. Why not? It's hunting season. We'll give away trail cameras. That's cool. And, yeah, that's kind of it, I think.
All right. Yeah, we got to roll.
All right. We'll see y'all next week.
Later.
Take me on down the river where the guilt can't find